Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. Today we are going to be looking at the motion tracker inside of Cinema 4D. So I have done videos before on tracking your camera, and I've pretty much exclusively been doing it inside of After Effects. Now this is the first time I've done it inside of Cinema 4D, and the native Cinema 4D tracker is very good and does a great job, and it allows for you to be more specific with regards to what it is you want to track, as opposed to with After Effects where you're just kind of tracking everything in the scene. You have a lot more control with Cinema 4D's tracker. So that's pretty much all we're going to be doing, and we're going to be getting this done in just around 20 minutes. So let's get started on this. Here we go. Okay guys, so first of all we need to turn our footage into an image sequence, because Cinema 4D much prefers image sequences over video for tracking. So I'm just going to double click in this panel here and we'll be able to bring in our footage. You'll be able to download this from the description below. So I'm just going to check, if I hit Ctrl-Alt-G, I can open up the interpret footage window, and I want to round this frame rate off to 30 frames a second. Hit enter on that, and now I'm just going to drag this down to my composition icon here. That'll create a new composition. If I hit Ctrl-K to see my composition settings, you can see that the frame rate has been adjusted. Okay, so this is the footage, and this is what we're going to be using for tracking. This is a really quality piece of footage for tracking. It even has these like track points. They're obviously not track points, but they look like somebody actually set up track points on the roof here. So, and we have like, you know, an X here and an X or a cross. So really good footage for tracking. So now we want to turn this video into an image sequence. So to do that, go to composition and go to, where is it? Let's see, composition, add to render queue. We want to set the output module here to be a PNG sequence. Hit OK on that. And output, we're going to output this to a place. Oh, I just created, did I just rename a folder there? I did. So I'm going to make sure to set that back to what it should be. Just ignore me now for a second. So I have a folder set up, and we're going to save our movie sequence into this folder called movie sequence. Hit save on that, and now we can just render this out. So that's going to render this movie out as an image sequence, and I'm just going to pause the video here, and we'll pop back in when that's done. Okay, so that is coming up to the end of doing its business, and now what we can do is we can hop into Cinema 4D and just import in this sequence. So what we can do is switch the layout to the tracking layout, motion tracker layout, and that gives us everything we're going to need to get this footage tracked. So first thing is to double click in here to create this motion tracker object. That's done. Then we can do a double click again in the same place to bring in our footage. So let's find the folder, and this is it, and this is the PNG sequence that we just rendered out of After Effects. So I'm just going to click on the first frame here and click on open. Now you can see that we have our footage in there, and I can bring up the resampling of this just so we get a clearer playback. So we can bring that up to full if you want. There's really no need. And I'm also just going to hit play, just so I can have a look at the footage in full, and also at the same time I'm going to be loading each of these frames into the cache. So we're just going to get better track, and we're going to get faster playback as well once this is fully loaded in. So that is almost done. loading all of those frames into the cache. And now if we just play that again, you see we're getting a nice real-time playback on the video footage. Cool. Okay, so let's start with motion tracking now. The first thing we're going to be doing is setting up the 2D tracking. Before we do the 3D solve, we have to do the 2D tracking, and Cinema is going to be using the track points from the 2D tracking to, I suppose, calculate the camera and the position of the camera, the movement of the camera, and all that good stuff. So make sure your motion tracker object's selected. Go into the 2D tracking tab, and if you want, you can increase the number of tracks, maybe up to like 500, just to give Cinema a better chance of calculating the camera. Well, it's going to calculate the camera anyway, but it'll do a better job the more tracks it actually has. Once you have that done, what we can do is click on this button to track forward. If we had the timeline at the end, we'd track backwards, but you want to start at frame 0 and track forward. So I'm going to do that now. And you can see down here that it's processing each of the frames. And that is going to take not that long time-wise. And once that's done, we're going to see a bunch of pink diamonds kind of on the screen, and they're going to be tracking each of the points that Cinema 4D has determined would be good to track. So there we have our track points, and you can see that some of them are staying for longer than others. But that's fine. We have a good number of track points in there, and that's going to give Cinema 4D a good chance of doing a good 3D solve for us. Now, what I want to do is set up some manual tracks also, because I want to have my object, my 3D object. I'm going to put a 3D object on the roof here of this building. Now, we don't have any track points that we're going to be able to use that are actually on the roof, because we want to create a plane or a floor on the roof for possibly a Mixamo character to stand on. So what we're going to do is set up some manual track points. So if we go into manual tracking here, we can right click. This one's kind of in my way, so I'm going to get rid of that actually. I'm going to get my lasso selection, and I'm going to just get rid of that track point because it's kind of in my way, and I'm going to be setting up a track point right here anyway. We can also get rid of any other track points that we don't want to keep in our scene, but I don't have any that I want to get rid of aside from that one. Okay, so now we can create some manual track points. So I'm going to right click here, making sure motion tracker is selected, manual tracking tab is clicked, right click, and you just go to create user track here. Now we can use this tracker view window here to just position the track point. See that kind of white spot here? If I turn on tracker view, this is what the tracker actually sees. So there's a clear white point there that we're going to be tracking. And I can shrink the track area here. And I can also, in the viewport, I can shrink the area that it's going to be tracking. This is the area that it's going to be searching within on each frame. So we can bring that down as well. So once we have that done, it's just a matter of tracking this using the track forward button here. So again, processing frame, it's a lot quicker this time because, you know, it wasn't calculating a whole bunch of track points. It's just calculating one manual track point that we set up. And if we scrub the timeline here and we keep our eye on this track point, hopefully that track point stays in position and it's a pretty decent track. And we can also look at it in the viewport as well to see that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so let's create another track point here. Right click, go to create user track. Now we do the same thing again. We can just position this. Now, what if we turn the tracker view off and on and off? This is what the tracker can see. And right now, this white part is really just blending in too much with this white part in the background. So it's not going to give us a good track. What we can do is we can change the color filter here to enhanced red, because as you can see, this kind of roof border here is kind of red. So if we change this to enhanced red, or yeah, that's green, enhanced red. Now you can see that the tracker is going to highlight it's going to focus in on the red, and the background is green, so it's not going to look at that at all. So now you can see that that's going to give us a much better track. Let's just shrink this down a bit, and this one as well we can shrink down. And let's do the same thing again. We can track forward on that. That'll process each of the frames, and if we keep our eye on this as we're scrubbing, you'll see that we're getting a pretty decent track on that as well. So we need one more track point, because when we're creating a plane, we need to use 3 track points to do so. So we need one more. So I'm going to right click, create user track here, and I'm going to line this up right there. Shrink this down again and go smaller as well. Oh, it's not letting me. Hang on. Let me just delete that, because I'm not quite sure how I can zoom out to grab that handle. I'll just do that again. Create user track, line it up, and then shrink that down, making sure it's correctly lined up, and shrink down this search area here as well. And again, I'm going to track forward on that. Now we can keep our eye on this and have a look at the track on that. Spot on. Okay, so now we have all of our automatic track points that Cinema created for us. Then we have our manual tracks, which are all here. Now, once we go ahead and solve the camera, Cinema is going to prioritize these track points, because it knows that we went to the trouble of setting these up. So it's going to prioritize these while it's calculating, while it's solving the camera. So we are ready to do the full 3D solve now on this. So that's going to give us a camera that we can actually check out the movement of it. It's going to basically just simulate the actual camera from this footage. So let's just jump into the 3D Solve tab here and click on Run 3D Solver. Now that is going to take a little bit of time. It's going to do, you can see it loading down here. It's going to take a bit of time, so I'm going to pause the video there and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that didn't take too long, and it said it's finished, so it's good to go. If we deactivate this camera now you can see we have our camera, and if we hit play, it's moving just as the real camera was from the actual video footage. And we have all our track points there as well. So we have in here, we have our user features, which are the manual track points that we created ourselves, and these are all the ones created by Cinema automatically. So I'm going to jump back into the camera here now, and we can just watch this, and we can see all of our track points. All of the green ones are good. I think the lighter in color they get. So if I just go into the auto features here, and if I just scrub down, all of the green track points are the best ones. And then as they slightly go to a kind of a less, they're kind of a darker green, they're not as good. And then they turn gray, and they're less reliable again, all the way down to red, which are not reliable at all. So we've quite a number of reliable track points in there. Now, remember, we did create this one. If I just go into, we have this one, and this one. These are the manual track points that we created ourselves. So they're going to be the most reliable, and they're set up just so we could create a plane right on the roof. And we can do that by, first of all, clicking on the motion tracker object and going down here to, well, first of all, we can create a position constraint. That's going to set the world center at whatever track point we decide to set world center at. So if I just click on this, and I'm going to set world center to be at this point here. So now you can see we have world center set up. To give you a better idea, I'll just jump in. This is the point we just clicked on. It created this constraint here on our motion tracker object, position constraint, and world center is now set on that track point. Now to create the plane, what we need to do is again click on our motion tracker object and go to create planar constraint. Now this time we need to select 3 points, and that's why we created these 3 manual track points here, so that we would be able to select this one, and this one. And we can tell the axis that that is set to Y. If I just create a figure here, he's going to appear at world center as he should. And if I click again on my planar constraint tag, and if I change the axis here to X, you can see what that's doing. So we created this planar constraint and we're telling it that the axis is the Y-axis. And you can figure out why we're doing that. The last thing we need to do is, again, click on the motion tracker object. We need to go to create vector constraint. Now, we can do this to fix our scale, because if we look at this figure, right, now he is about, he's exactly 180 centimeters, which is like the average height of a human, I believe, something like, I think that's set up like that. And what we can do is we can use the, if I click on the motion tracker here, and if we go to create vector constraint, this is what we can use to fix the scale. Because right now you can see that the scale is just completely out of whack, and you know, this guy is huge and he shouldn't be. He should only be 180 centimeters, and he's just, everything's off scale. The scale is wrong. So let's click on our motion tracker object and go to create vector constraint, and then we can select, let's say, this point and this point. Again, we're just using the did that work? Yeah, I think it did. And we're just using the manual track points that we set up. Then if we go into the vector constraint, we can say the axis, well, the axis is going to be the x-axis. Now, if we click on our figure here, you can see what's happening. Change this to Y. Then our figure faces that way. Change this to Z. He faces that way. We can reverse the axis and he's going to be facing that way. So you can get an idea why we're doing this. We're just telling Cinema that this line represents the x-axis. Now, for length, this is how we're going to fix the scale. So length of this, we can say it's known, and I don't know what the length of this is. I'm going to take a guess and say maybe it's 200 centimeters. So I wouldn't say I'm too far off. Now, I'm not very good at guessing lengths, but the scale definitely looks a lot better than it was. So if I click on my figure here now and go into my move tool, make sure object mode is clicked, and I can kind of move this guy over so he's not standing right in the corner. Move this guy back. And now if we have a look at this, you can see that this has been successfully tracked. Our figure is standing on the roof and there's no slipping and sliding going on there, so that's a pretty decent track. There's still a number of steps that you guys would need to do in order to render this out. I mean, you could bring in a Mixamo character into the scene. We could just quickly do that now. Let's see, I have loads of these guys here. Pub dancing, let's see what this is. Say no to that. Now he should appear at world center, and he does. And if I just grab his geometry and his bones there and just put him back to around about the position that our figure is, get rid of our figure, and there we have an actual, well, he's not actually dancing for the whole sequence because we need to loop the animation. We can do that quickly if we open up the timeline, select the Mixamo rig here, and we can set the in the track properties here, we can set the after to repeat and number of repetitions, just 50 would do it. And now that should loop over and over. But anyway, my point is, with this, there's still a number of things you have to do to get to a point where everything's ready for rendering it out. First of all, you'd have to set up a floor that would catch shadows. You'd have to create a sky object, all of this stuff before this is ready to render out. And you guys might be interested in how you go about doing that. And I'm sure a lot of you probably are fully aware of how you go about doing something like that. But if you are not, I have a number of videos. I do a lot of compositing videos. My last video was, it's going to pop up in the link there now above at the top of the screen. It just goes over all the things you'll need to do to set this up for render. And you'll be able to apply the same methods to this exact video to get your shadows in there, to set up everything else for render, to get the lighting accurate and all that good stuff. So if you guys want to check that out, please do watch the video or any of my videos on compositing. But that's it, guys. Thanks again for watching. I hope you learned a lot, and make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, just so you'll get notified whenever I upload new content. See you in the next video.